The first time I realized the company was rotting from the inside, I was staring at a screen full of muted faces, pretending to care. 200 employees, dozens of black rectangles, and in the middle of it all, Mark Ellison, CEO of Nexora Analytics, performing his favorite act, the visionary. He stood in front of a carefully curated bookshelf, chin lifted like a man who'd never been wrong. "Team," he said, flashing that politician's smile. "We're building a culture of innovation. Everyone here plays a role in Nexora's success story." I should have laughed, because what he meant was, everyone here plays a role in making me look good. Behind the glass of my webcam, I sat at my home desk, coffee gone cold, project files stacked in digital chaos, the clock creeping toward 8 p.m. on a Thursday. I'd been in back-to-back calls for 12 hours, and somehow this motivational all-hands was supposed to be the reward. Then it happened. The moment that broke something in me. Mark began bragging about the firm's latest success, a data migration project that had brought in 2 new enterprise clients. He talked about the late nights, the technical brilliance, the leadership coordination. He thanked the executive team by name. Not once did he mention the department that had actually built the damn system, my department. I led that team. My people stayed awake until 3 a.m. fixing server collapses, rewriting code that other departments kept breaking, patching things no one else understood. And there he was, narrating it like he'd written a single line of it himself. "Clara's team really delivered under pressure," said the COO, trying to throw me a bone. Mark smiled, patronizing. Yes, of course. Great support from the operations side. But the real lift came from the leadership level. Strategy matters. Support. That's all we were to him. Hands that built, not minds that created. I unmuted. "Actually, Mark, the implementation came directly from—" He cut me off mid-sentence, still smiling. "Let's not get into the weeds, Clara. We can discuss technical details offline. Moving on." A few cameras flickered. One teammate mouthed, "I'm sorry." The chat lit up with quiet rebellion, emojis, supportive comments, someone typing "let her speak" before quickly deleting it. I stayed quiet. But inside, something shifted. The part of me that tolerated corporate politics for the sake of progress finally ran out of oxygen. After the meeting, I sat in the dark, laptop lid half closed, watching the reflection of my own face on the black screen. I looked tired, yes, but there was something else in my eyes. Clarity. I opened a blank document. No title, no plan. Then my fingers started moving. To whom it may concern. Effective immediately, I resign from my position as head of data operations at Nexora Analytics. I paused. The cursor blinked, almost breathing. No, that wasn't enough. Not this time. I'd written plenty of resignation letters in my career, polite, polished, predictable. But this one wasn't going to disappear into an HR inbox. I deleted the email, opened a new document, printed it, signed it with a pen instead of my mouse. Something about the ink felt final, human. I placed the letter next to my laptop and looked at the company calendar. The next all-hands meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. Mark would be there, along with every senior leader and every burned-out employee pretending to be inspired. I smiled for the first time in days. That's where it would happen. No drama, no shouting, just truth, delivered clean, live, and unfiltered. I didn't know it yet, but a week from that moment, the sound of a forgotten mic would turn that decision into a story that would echo through Nexora's hallways for years. But for now, it was just me, my signed letter, and the kind of quiet that only comes before a storm. If you've ever watched a company eat its own people, you know it doesn't happen in one bite. It happens slowly, over meetings, memos, and quiet moments where someone good decides to care a little less. By the time Friday rolled around, Nexora was already halfway digested. I watched it happen in real time. The same morning I decided to hand in my resignation, Amira, one of my brightest analysts, came into my office in tears. Well, she appeared in my Zoom waiting room in tears, because at Nexora, emotions were never allowed in person. Her camera flickered on and she wiped at her face quickly. "Sorry, Clara, I can't." "Take a breath," I said. "What happened?" Her voice shook. "The client meeting this morning. They said the data report was wrong again. But it wasn't. I showed the senior team the error last week. They ignored it. And now Mark's blaming me." There it was, the Nexora pattern. Leadership makes the mess, we get to mop it. "Did you record the call?" I asked quietly. She nodded. "Yes. I don't know what to do." I leaned forward, elbows on my desk. "Do nothing," I said. "Not yet. Just keep your notes. I'll handle it." The words left my mouth before I'd even decided to mean them. But when she looked up, eyes still red, something in me snapped fully into place. That's when I knew. I wasn't just quitting. I was leaving a match behind. The hours crawled. Slack buzzed with chatter about the upcoming all-hands. Another vision alignment call led by Mark. Someone joked in the group chat, "Can we align on paying people fairly this time?" A laughing emoji. Then silence. By noon, I'd cleaned my inbox, organized my drive, and packed my few desk items into a cardboard box. A mug, a small plant, a framed photo of my old team from before the company restructured them out of existence. At 1:55 p.m., my calendar pinged. All hands meeting, company-wide, attendance required. I stared at the camera for a moment before turning it on. I adjusted the lighting, made sure the resignation letter was in frame beside me. The ink looked darker under the light. It almost glared. The meeting started like every other. Mark's voice filled the screen, smooth, confident, dripping with empty enthusiasm. "Team, what a month we've had. Revenue up, engagement strong, innovation at an all-time high." In the gallery view, hundreds of faces looked frozen, the corporate equivalent of holding your breath. I could tell who'd already mentally left by the lack of eye contact. "Before we jump to updates," Mark continued, "I want to thank everyone for their resilience. We're all one family here at Nexora." I almost laughed. Families don't file HR complaints. He went on about synergy and shared vision, words so overused they'd lost gravity. When he mentioned the new Employee Wellness Initiative, I caught sight of Amira's face, her camera off, name muted. I knew she was listening, seething quietly. And that's when I decided. Not tomorrow, not later, now. I minimized the meeting window and opened my resignation letter. I read it once more. Simple, direct, true. Then I hovered over the unmute button. It's strange. The exact second before you make a choice that changes everything doesn't feel cinematic. It's silent, cold, almost boring. Then you click. I unmuted. "Mark, may I say something?" His voice brightened. "Of course, Clara. Always great to hear from one of our star department heads." That was the last lie he'd tell unchallenged. I smiled, calm, steady. "Actually, this isn't an update. It's an announcement." The chat flickered. I could feel 200 people suddenly listening. Mark blinked. "An announcement?" "Yes," I said. "I'd like to take this moment to thank my team, the ones who've held this company together through chaos, layoffs, and broken promises. The ones who've worked unpaid weekends while executives polished PowerPoints." He started to interrupt. I raised a hand. "Please, let me finish." Then I reached beside me, picked up the letter, and held it up to the camera. This is my resignation. Effective immediately. Gasps. Messages flooding the chat. Someone wrote, "Holy hell!" Another, "Is this real?" I took a slow breath. To my team, you deserved better leadership. To the rest of you, take care of yourselves. Nexora doesn't deserve what you give it. And before anyone could stop me, I smiled, clicked leave meeting, and watched the screen fade to black. I sat there for a moment in the stillness, heartbeat loud in my ears. Then faintly, through my speakers, before the call disconnected fully, I heard his voice, angry, unfiltered. "Unbelievable. That woman's been a problem since day one. HR better fix this before the board hears about it." And then, silence. I froze. The meeting was still live. He hadn't muted his mic. 200 people had just heard exactly who their CEO really was. And I hadn't even meant to start a revolution. Not yet. It took less than 20 minutes for a private moment to turn into a digital wildfire. My phone started vibrating across the desk like it was alive. Slack messages, texts, LinkedIn pings, all overlapping. The first one just said, "Clara, you won't believe this." Then came another. "He didn't mute. Everyone heard." By the time I opened my work chat, the damage was irreversible. Someone had clipped the recording, the part where I held up my resignation, then the part where Mark's voice hissed through the speakers, dripping with venom. "Unbelievable. That woman's been a problem since day one. She thinks she's smarter than the board. HR better clean this up before it spreads." It spread. Instantly. One of my old team members, Jared, sent me a message with 3 words. "He's finished, Clara." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Inside Nexora, the fallout was seismic. Employees began messaging each other privately, sharing screenshots, whispering about retaliation. By 4 p.m., the clip was everywhere. Re-uploaded, subtitled, memed, analyzed. One post on the company's internal forum read, "She said nothing untrue. He just confirmed it." Meanwhile, HR scrambled. By late evening, an email went out to all staff. Subject: clarification on today's all-hands call. Dear Nexora team, earlier today an unexpected incident occurred during our company-wide meeting. Please know leadership is handling the matter internally. We ask that all employees refrain from sharing or discussing the meeting recording. Thank you for your professionalism and commitment to Nexora's values. Professionalism. Values. The same words they'd used to bury accountability for years. The email had the opposite effect. Within minutes, someone leaked it to an industry forum. Comments poured in. By morning, #MikeGate was trending on Twitter. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open but untouched. I should have felt triumph. Instead, I felt still. The storm was forming around me, and all I could do was watch the clouds roll in. Amira called just before midnight. Her voice was shaking, not with fear but adrenaline. "Clara, the chat log went public. People are quoting him. HR tried to lock the recording, but someone mirrored it. There's nothing they can do." "Breathe," I said quietly. "What's the atmosphere inside?" "Tense. People are angry. Even managers are turning off cameras during calls. It's like the whole company realized at once how fake everything was." I smiled faintly. "Truth has that effect. You planned this, didn't you?" I hesitated. "Not like this. But I won't pretend I'm sorry." The next morning, Mark tried to regain control. He called an emergency meeting with senior staff. The same black rectangles, the same forced calm. But this time, nobody looked impressed. The clip had stripped away the illusion. He wasn't the confident CEO anymore. He was a man cornered by his own echo. Employees recorded that meeting, too. Someone sent me a snippet. His voice, shaky but still defensive. "We're all professionals here. Let's remember that social media doesn't reflect the truth." Then a voice from somewhere in the gallery. "Maybe it finally does." By Thursday, the board had intervened. An internal investigation was launched, but everyone knew what that meant. They were already drafting his exit. Clients began reaching out to other firms, re-evaluating partnerships. HR went dark. I sat back in my chair, watching it all unfold like a slow-motion implosion. I hadn't wanted revenge, not really. I'd wanted acknowledgement. But once truth leaves the microphone, it doesn't stop where you expect it to. That evening, I went for a walk downtown, phone buzzing in my pocket with notifications I didn't want to read. A neon sign reflected in a puddle at my feet, the Nexora logo, bright and hollow. For the first time, I saw it for what it was, not a brand, but a mask. As I crossed the street, Amira texted again. "They're saying you started a movement. People are calling it the Clara Call." I laughed out loud, startling a passerby. Maybe movements don't start with speeches after all. Sometimes they start with silence, the kind that follows when the wrong person forgets to mute their mic. And Nexora's silence was only just beginning. By Monday morning, Nexora's internal systems looked like a war zone. The company intranet was flooded with password resets and restricted access warnings. HR had locked down comments on internal forums. Someone had even disabled the company's Slack emoji reactions, as if muting laughter could stop rebellion. But it was too late. The damage had already gone global. The recording, that 47-second clip of Mark Ellison's unfiltered rant, had escaped the company firewall. Not through a hacker, not through a journalist, through employees, hundreds of them, each forwarding it quietly, almost ritualistically, to personal inboxes and friends in the industry. By 9 a.m., the video was everywhere. It opened with my voice, calm, tired, deliberate. "This is my resignation, effective immediately." Then Mark's. "Unbelievable. That woman's been a problem since day one. HR better spin this before it spreads. She's lucky she quit before I could fire her." Followed by silence, and then a single voice from the meeting, trembling but audible. Mark, you're not muted." That last line turned into a meme within hours. Someone even printed it on a t-shirt. The first headlines appeared by lunchtime. "Tech CEO caught on hot mic trashing employee during live company call." #MicGate, trends as Nexora employees speak out about toxic culture. "Resignation gone viral, how one department head sparked a corporate reckoning." Nexora's PR team tried to fight the flames with their favorite weapon, denial. They released a statement calling the video taken out of context, but context was the problem. There wasn't any to save him. That afternoon, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, ex-employees, recruiters, a few of my former colleagues whispering between exhaustion and exhilaration. Amira called from what sounded like a stairwell. "They're holding closed-door meetings all day. No one knows who leaked it. Mark's blaming comms, comms is blaming HR, HR's blaming the IT team." "Classic Nexora," I said. She exhaled. "People are scared, Clara. But also free? It's weird. They're joking again. Someone played your clip during the lunch break like it was a TED Talk." I couldn't help laughing. That's one way to start a movement. By evening, Mark went live again. A company-wide broadcast meant to rebuild trust. This time, everyone recorded. He looked like he hadn't slept. His voice was tight, rehearsed. "Team, I take full responsibility for my words. They were inappropriate and do not reflect our values. I've reached out to Ms. Hayes personally to apologize." That was a lie. No call, no email, not even a lawyer's letter. The chat during the meeting was a battlefield. Hundreds of messages scrolling faster than the moderators could delete them. "You only care now because it's public. We heard what you really think. Mute yourself next time." Someone even renamed their display name to "not muted." It was chaos, and it was glorious. Meanwhile, I sat at home with my laptop open, the video paused on Mark's frozen expression. That split second when he realized his mic was still live. His eyes wide, his hand frozen mid-gesture. That image would haunt him forever. And honestly, it should. I didn't leak the video. I didn't need to. I'd simply told the truth, and the truth had done the rest. By the end of the week, Nexora's board announced an independent investigation into leadership behavior. Anonymous surveys were sent out to staff. Over 80% of responses described the culture as fear-based or toxic. The board had no choice. They suspended Mark, pending review. The same man who once silenced me with a smile was now learning what silence really felt like. That Friday night, I walked past Nexora's headquarters downtown, the same gleaming glass tower I used to enter before sunrise. Now the lights on the top floor were off. A single sheet of paper was taped to the locked front door. All operations remote until further notice. I stopped for a moment, watching the reflection of the building in the rain-slick sidewalk. My own face stared back. Tired, yes, but lighter somehow. For years, I'd worked to keep Nexora alive. Now, by simply refusing to stay quiet, I'd finally made it honest. That weekend, the clip hit 1 million views. Someone added music to it. Someone else made an edit titled, "Truth has no mute button." And somewhere out there, Mark Ellison was watching his empire dissolve. Not from scandal, not from sabotage, but from the simplest mistake of all. He forgot that power doesn't protect you when the mic's still on. By the following week, Nexora was no longer a company. It was a crime scene with Wi-Fi. The internal Slack channels that once buzzed with corporate jargon now looked like therapy sessions. Anonymous employees posting memes of microphones, whispering thank yous, sharing their own stories of humiliation. One message said simply, "She didn't expose him. He exposed himself." I didn't respond, but I read every word. Because for the first time in years, I felt the company had found its voice. And it wasn't Mark's. On Monday, the board launched Phase 2 of the independent investigation. Everyone who had ever worked under Mark was asked to submit statements. Anonymous, they promised. But I knew how those things went. There's no such thing as anonymous when the guilty still have access to the servers. Still, the submissions flooded in. Dozens of employees, current and former, came forward with screenshots, call logs, and old emails. Stories of intimidation, favoritism, and punishment disguised as performance reviews. The investigators barely had time to breathe. By Wednesday, an internal memo leaked to the press. Preliminary findings suggest systemic misconduct and toxic leadership practices at Nexora Analytics. The words toxic leadership hit the headlines like an earthquake. Stock prices plunged 12% overnight. Clients froze contracts. The boardroom, once Mark's kingdom, turned into his trial room. I got the call that same day from Miriam Chen, Nexora's head of legal, someone who'd once avoided eye contact with me in elevators. "Clara," she said, voice hushed but urgent. "The board wants to meet. Off the record. They'd like your perspective." I almost laughed. "You mean the perspective they ignored for 5 years?" She sighed. "They're desperate, Clara, and honestly, they should be." I agreed, but only on my terms, virtual, recorded, and unedited. The next morning, I logged into a meeting that looked more like a confession than a consultation. 4 board members, all pale under the fluorescent light. No smiles, no scripts. "Ms. Hayes," one began, "we want to extend an apology for how your departure was handled." "Handled?" I said. "That's one word for it." He cleared his throat. "We also understand there were issues with executive conduct that have come to light." I leaned forward slightly. "You mean the conduct everyone knew about but pretended not to?" Silence. Even through the screen, I could feel their discomfort. "Tell me something," I said. "If he hadn't forgotten to mute his mic, would you still be pretending nothing was wrong?" No one answered. "Exactly," I said, and ended the call. That afternoon, Amira messaged me again. "You should see this." Attached was an internal email from Mark, his last. "To all Nexora staff, effective immediately, I will be taking a leave of absence to focus on personal matters. I'm proud of what we built, and I wish you all success moving forward. Mark Ellison." No apology, no ownership, just retreat. Within minutes, replies flooded the thread, hundreds of them, some sarcastic, some furious, some relieved, and one from Amira herself that went viral inside the company. "We built Nexora, Mark. You just muted us until the batteries ran out." By Friday, employees began resigning in waves. Whole departments walked out. LinkedIn updates appeared like dominoes. "Moving on from Nexora. New beginnings. Grateful for my team." Each one a quiet eulogy for a company that mistook fear for leadership. And through it all, I stayed silent, watching, listening. The revolution didn't need me to lead it anymore. It was self-sustaining. Late that night, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. No greeting, no signature. Just a single line. "You got what you wanted. I hope it was worth it." I knew who it was. I didn't reply. Because he was wrong. This wasn't about what I wanted. This was about what everyone at Nexora had needed for years. The sound of a truth so loud it couldn't be muted again. I closed my laptop and sat by the window, city lights flickering below. Somewhere downtown, Nexora's headquarters still stood, lights off, curtains drawn. Silence finally honest. For the first time, that silence didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. Movements don't announce themselves. They arrive as calendar invites no one created, as documents with 100 anonymous cursors, as Slack channels that multiply after midnight. By Tuesday, Nexora wasn't healing. It was organizing. It started with an open letter. Title, "We are not on mute." No signatures, just roles. Data ops, client success, research, QA. The first paragraph was a scalpel. Clean, sharp, undeniable. It outlined what everyone already knew and leadership pretended to forget. Intimidation sold as urgency. Credit laundered upward. Dissent mislabeled as negativity. In the margin, I watched a comment appear and vanish. "He taught us to whisper. Now we're done whispering." The letter collected endorsements faster than HR could draft warnings. By noon, it had 1,000 internal views and, somehow, one outside the firewall. Then came the headcount spreadsheet. Anonymous but meticulous. Color-coded by team. Red for actively interviewing. Amber for ready to resign. Green for staying if leadership changes. Columns filled in like time-lapse ivy. Within hours, a pattern revealed itself. Whole functions ready to walk. Someone added a second tab. Clients at risk. The list was longer than the board ever let themselves believe. HR sent a memo titled Respectful Discourse Guidelines. It read like a pillow held gently over a face. Within minutes, someone replied all. Risky, reckless, heroic. Respect is what you earn when people aren't afraid of you. The thread exploded. Moderators tried to lock it. Screenshots beat them to it. The bravest act came from the quietest department, finance. They posted a sanitized dashboard, no secrets, just ratios, showing how much margin had been juiced by temporary headcount controls and deferred support obligations. Translation: burn people, bank the savings, call it efficiency. Underneath, a single line: this is what your weekends bought. Even the cynics stopped typing. By midweek, the Mike Gate jokes gave way to logistics. People drafted coordinated notice dates. A shared doc listed pro bono employment lawyers, resume volunteers, and mental health resources. Someone spun up a private Discord. No corporate admin, no archive policy, no fear. I joined under a throwaway name and listened. They weren't angry for sport. They were building an exit ramp and leaving road signs for anyone still inside. Clients noticed. Of course they did. One sent a letter to the board. Delivery is people. Another paused renewal and asked for a new escalation path that doesn't route through PR. A third requested a meeting with the people who actually did the work. For years, leadership had tried to convince clients that results were manufactured in the C-suite. Now clients were asking to speak to the factory floor. Mark tried a comeback, an email threaded with contrition, and the kind of leadership aphorisms you find stitched on expensive pillows. I hear you. I'm learning. We move forward together. He scheduled an open forum town hall. Cameras on, chat moderated, questions pre-collected. It was a disaster. Someone posted the open letter in the Q&A box 50 times until a moderator gave up deleting. A senior engineer unmuted without permission and read the first paragraph aloud. When they cut his audio, 3 others picked up mid-sentence like a relay. For the first time, the silence belonged to the executives. That afternoon, the HR director resigned for personal reasons. Comms followed. Legal stopped answering emails that asked for anything but dates. The board posted an update admitting cultural concerns. In Slack, a GIF of a glacier calving looped under the announcement, slow, inevitable, loud. My phone buzzed with a message from Amira. They want you to lead the transition committee. A screenshot followed. Employees proposing a caretaker group to stabilize clients while the board figured out who would hold the title no one trusted. My name sat at the top of the draft like a dare. I stared at it longer than I meant to. The easiest vanity in the world is righteous leadership. Wear the halo, write the thread, take the bow. But that's not what this needed. It needed something I'd promised myself when I held up that letter. To let the truth work without me at the microphone. Tell them to put your name there, I typed back. And 3 others who did the bleeding while I signed the documents. She sent 7 crying, laughing emojis, and then the thumbs up that meant understood, not amused. That night, the Discord lit with small victories. Payroll honoring back pay. A client moving their business but hiring half the Nexora team intact. A junior PM sharing an email. First time in years I'm not terrified opening my laptop. Someone posted a photo of a cake in the break room, homemade, lopsided, iced with the words, "You're not crazy," in blue. It wasn't corporate. It was honest. The board's final message arrived Friday. Interim Leadership Council established. External search initiated. Cultural remediation to begin immediately. No names, no praise, just admission. The council's roster dropped 10 minutes later. Amira's name sat first. I exhaled. She'd keep the lights on in rooms that deserved light. On my screen, the open letter reached version 37. A new line appeared at the end, bolded. When they mute the wrong thing, we remember our voices. I didn't write it. I didn't need to. The company had learned a language it couldn't unlearn. Outside, the city hummed its indifferent lullaby. I closed the laptop and listened to a quieter sound, the absence of dread. The uprising wasn't a riot. It was a reassembly, pieces finding each other after years of being told they didn't fit. Truth, unmuted, had done what I couldn't with 1,000 status updates. It taught them they weren't alone. And once people stop feeling alone, they stop asking permission to be whole. By the time summer reached the city, Nexora was no longer the company it had been, or pretended to be. The old guard was gone, their offices emptied, their names wiped from the internal directory like a cleanup script had run overnight. Yet the damage they left behind still lingered in the air, an invisible weight pressing down on every unfinished project, every silent Slack channel. The investigation report dropped on a humid Thursday morning. A 60-page document heavy with polite language masking brutal truths, words like systemic dysfunction, leadership negligence, and sustained psychological pressure dotted the paragraphs like landmines. But the conclusion was simple. Nexora's culture was compromised by fear-driven management and retaliation from senior executives. No surprises. No denials left to hide behind. The board voted unanimously to terminate Mark Ellison for cause, a polite way to say, he's done and we're keeping his severance. The announcement went live before noon. By evening, it had made headlines again. CEO fired after mic scandal. Nexora admits toxic culture. The comment section was brutal. Investors called it inevitable. Ex-employees called it justice. And one anonymous user simply wrote, "She warned him." That afternoon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but curiosity is a dangerous thing.
"Clara Hayes?" the voice said, smooth, controlled, the tone of someone who'd been coached by PR. "This is Mark Ellison." For a moment, the room went quiet. Even the hum of my air conditioner seemed to fade. "Mark," I said, steady. "You finally unmuted yourself again." A low chuckle, not amused, resigned. "I wanted to say, you were right." "About what?" He paused, as if he wasn't sure where to begin. "I built something I thought was indestructible. Turns out it was just loud." I didn't reply. He filled the silence. "You think I don't know what it's like to watch your own people turn on you? They used to cheer when I spoke. Now they delete my name from presentations." "Maybe they didn't turn on you," I said. "Maybe they finally turned toward each other." That landed. He didn't respond for a full 10 seconds. Then, "You always did have the last word." "Not the last," I said. "Just the one that mattered." He sighed. "They're going to replace me with someone half my age who learned leadership from a podcast." "Maybe that's what the company needs," I said. "Someone who knows what a mute button is." For a brief moment, I thought he might laugh, but instead his voice softened. "You made your point, Clara. Enjoy your victory." "It's not a victory," I said. "It's repair." He hung up without another word. 2 days later, the board held a press conference. Cameras, flashbulbs, polished speeches about rebuilding trust. But the moment that mattered wasn't theirs. It was Amira's. She stepped up to the podium, nervous but steady, representing the Interim Leadership Council. She wore no blazer, no corporate costume, just a simple navy dress and a small pin shaped like a microphone. "Nexora was built by people who were told to stay quiet," she said. "Now, we're building it again. This time, without the silence." The crowd erupted. The reporters wrote their headlines, but the employees, the ones who stayed, finally smiled for real. I watched from home, coffee in hand, pride swelling somewhere deep behind my ribs. She didn't need my words anymore. She had her own. That evening, my inbox pinged. A single email from Nexora Board Communications. Subject,
Thank you. Ms. Hayes, on behalf of the board, we extend our gratitude for your integrity and courage. We would like to invite you to serve as an external advisor for Nexora's Cultural Renewal Initiative. The Board of Directors. I stared at it for a while before replying. Appreciate the offer, but some rebuilds need new architects. Clara. Then I closed my laptop and let the quiet settle. That night I took a walk through the business district. The Nexora tower loomed above me, still lit but different somehow. In one of the upper floors I could see movement. Not executives, not late-night politics, but people working, laughing, talking, a team. In the reflection of the glass, my own face looked older, calmer. Behind me, a billboard played a new Nexora ad. We hear you. I smiled. Irony had a sense of humor after all. The reckoning was over. The noise that had built Nexora's empire was gone, replaced by something better. Honesty, even when it hurt. And for the first time since I'd lifted that letter to the camera, I realized something important. The mic didn't destroy Mark Ellison. It saved everyone he'd silenced. A year later, I walked into a conference hall filled with a quiet kind of electricity. Not the kind born of fear or ambition, but of purpose. Rows of people with laptops, badges, and stories, consultants, managers, interns, all gathered under a banner that read, Unmuted, Building Integrity in Modern Leadership. I'd been invited to speak at the closing session, not as a CEO, not as an activist, just as the woman who once held up a letter on camera and accidentally reminded an entire industry what honesty sounds like. As I stood backstage, the event coordinator whispered, "They still talk about you like it happened yesterday." I smiled faintly. To some of them, it did. The lights dimmed. My cue. I stepped onto the stage. No notes, no script, just a glass of water and a story everyone thought they already knew. A year ago, I began, I resigned from a company called Nexora Analytics, live, during an all-hands meeting. You probably saw the video, or the memes. Laughter rippled through the audience. But that moment wasn't about a microphone. It wasn't about revenge. It was about something smaller and harder. The courage to stop cooperating with what you know is wrong. A pause. See, I didn't plan to change anything. I just refused to keep pretending. But when power forgets it's being watched, it tells on itself. The room was silent, the kind of silence that listens. What happened afterward wasn't chaos. It was clarity. People finally realized they weren't crazy, that integrity wasn't rebellion, and that leadership means listening before you speak. The mic didn't destroy a company. It amplified the truth. I looked out into the crowd, faces lit by soft blue light, some nodding, some teary-eyed. And the truth is this: you don't have to be loud to be heard. You just have to be unafraid to speak, once, clearly. Applause began slow, then built into a wave. I stepped back, heart steady. Somewhere in the front row, Amira stood, clapping with both hands, smiling the way people do when they've turned survival into success. After the session, people lined up to talk, to share stories, to say thank you, to ask what came next. One young man, no older than 25, held out a small microphone pin, the same design Amira had worn that day. "I work at Nexora now," he said. "The culture's different. We actually talk now, like really talk." I took the pin, turning it over in my hand. "Keep it that way," I said. "Silence isn't loyalty, it's surrender." He nodded,
eyes bright, and walked away. Later that evening, I found myself standing outside the same restaurant where it had all started, the one where I'd written that resignation letter in my head. The city hummed softly, familiar, but changed. I ordered a glass of wine, sat by the window, and opened my notebook. Not for work, not for strategy, just reflection. I wrote, "Sometimes the mic doesn't amplify your voice. It exposes who was speaking over it, and sometimes that's all the justice you need." Before leaving, I checked my phone, a new message from Amira. Board approved the partnership. Nexora's funding a scholarship program for women in data leadership. It's called the Clara Hayes Fellowship. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I laughed, quietly, the kind that comes from somewhere deep. Outside, the city lights reflected in the rain-soaked streets like hundreds of tiny signals blinking in unison. Not noise, not chaos, just connection. A year ago, I had been silenced in a meeting that changed everything. Now, people were building careers, companies, and communities out of that same moment. That's what legacy really is. Not power that lasts, but truth that keeps echoing long after you've stopped speaking. I walked out into the night, the mic pin warm in my hand, and whispered to myself, not as a symbol, not as a headline, but as a reminder. The world doesn't need louder leaders. It needs unmuted ones. And somewhere, in 100 offices I'd never step into, new voices were unmuting, not to fight, but to be heard. And for the first time in my career, that was enough.